another transformative episode of Pleasure Principles, the podcast where we dive into the art, science, and the soul of pleasure, intimacy, empowerment, and healing. I'm your host Avik, and today, get ready because we are talking, or I mean, we are taking this discussion a deep, profound journey into the heart of what it truly means to love consciously, reclaim our personal power, and step into the heroic adventure of our own lives. Yeah. So, joining me is a man whose work embodies this very path, Christian. Christian de la Huerta. So, welcome to the show, Christian.
Hi, Avik. I'm so happy to be here with you. Thanks for having me.
Amazing, amazing. So, dear listeners, before we start delving into this conversation, I'll quickly love to introduce you with Christian. So, Christian is a transformational coach, award winning author, TEDx speaker, and the brilliant mind behind conscious love and awakening the soul of power. Yeah. So, with over 30 years of guiding individuals and couples towards empowered living and soulful relationships, he helps us strip away the illusions that block authentic connection. So, whether you are navigating the love, power dynamics, and spiritual awakening, or maybe simply trying to embody your truest self, then this episode is going to nourish every layer of your being. So, why to wait? Let's dive in. Welcome to the show again.
Thanks again. I love the introduction. That's beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah. So Christian, like, I mean, let's start with this very simple question which we often hear. Like, what is love really? I mean, beyond the I
Very,
believe
very
it's
silly
a
question, right?
yeah. So if you can share, yeah.
Well, let's talk about what it means, what conscious love means.
Okay.
And to me, what that means is
Mm,
when we're loving in an intentional
mm,
way, courageous, liberating way that's rooted in personal responsibility.
mm,
And there's so much confusion about love and relationships.
mm,
Um, and one of my favorite definitions of love
mm.
is paraphrasing Scott Peck, that love
Okay.
is not a feeling.
Mm,
We confuse that feeling of loving and love, of being in love, with
mm.
the act of loving.
Okay.
And think about disciplining a child, because they're having too
Mm,
much sugar or they're about to run into a busy street. And sometimes you have to use that, like powerful words and emotions
mm,
for their sake. So it doesn't feel good, but it's a profound act of love.
yeah.
Uh, and the way that we can think about love is when we place ourselves outside of our comfort zone, right? When we have to do something that's not really what we may want to be doing
Mm,
at that moment for the sake of the spiritual growth of another being.
mm,
That's a profound way of looking at love. And so unconscious loving would be when we confuse love with possessiveness, or when we get into validation because
mm,
and when we get into relationship for the sense of validation because you
mm,
are gonna make me happy. It's like, yikes, what a responsibility to place on anybody else to
mm,
make us happy. So to me, loving consciously, it's really a call to waking up,
mm,
to remembering who we really are, to waking
mm.
up to life itself.
True. Lovely. And then, and like, I mean, beyond the romanticized ideals, like beyond Hollywood, what does I mean, when you work with people, like breaking free from that unhealthy patterns, what do you think are the biggest myth about love that holds them back?
Hmm. Well, I think it's that is when we approach love in order to fulfill ourselves, in order to complete
Mhm,
ourselves, right? Like this myth
mhm,
that if I could
mhm.
only find the right one, in quotes,
Okay.
then I
Yeah.
would be happy. And again, how
Mm,
I mean, that's never gonna work. There isn't anybody out there who's gonna make us happy, and it's not
Mhm.
their job to. What a big responsibility to place on anybody. So whenever we approach a relationship that way, it's never
Mhm.
gonna be enough. That there's
Mhm.
just it's never gonna work out ultimately because it's not their job to make us happy. So to
Mm.
me, the way that a relationship has a chance of working is when both beings approach it from a place of wholeness as much as possible, right? When we get to the
Okay.
place where we don't need anybody to have a sense of completion, of wholeness, of knowing
Mm.
who we are, then a relationship is like the icing on the cake. It adds to. And if we do the relationship consciously, then it
Mm.
really speeds up the evolutionary process, the transformational process,
Mm.
the process of growth and evolution. Because the thing is we all have blind spots. So we're never gonna see, in the mirror in front of us, the blind spot is behind us, so we're never gonna see it in ourselves. But
Mm.
if we approach the relationship consciously, meaning um, that it's a way that we can help each other grow and see some of these spots that we're never gonna see, blind spots that we're never gonna see in ourselves. So,
Mhm.
when we're in a conscious relationship, the more that whatever they do gets us upset,
Mm.
gets us whatever, the clearer it is that we're also doing that. That
Yeah.
that we're judging in the other, it's also in ourselves, and it could look completely differently.
Mm.
Completely different, but
True.
it's a safe bet. Because it's very easy to judge the other person. It's like,
Mm.
"Oh, you always do this," and point the finger. "You never do that. You're this way. You blah, blah, blah," right? We're really good at that.
Mm.
So that's like shoving the mirror in somebody's face. But
Mm.
if we're gonna be free, if we wanna grow from the relationship, the important thing is to turn that mirror around, which is really
Mhm.
difficult. It's sometimes it's nothing short of heroic, and ask ourselves, "If it's there, it's here. How do I do
Mhm.
that? How
True.
do I do that?" And it can be really subtle. For example, I was
Mm.
dating somebody, some many years ago,
Mhm.
but suddenly it disappeared. Like, no response, no email, no text, no phone call, nothing.
Mm.
I wasn't focused on myself. I was focused over there. What's going on? Called them at work. Now they're not there at work. Is it drugs? Is there alcohol? But I wasn't getting it. So
Mm.
subconsciously, of course, I had to create a different situation. And I was working with a
Mhm.
literary agent in New York who was usually great about communication. She'd get back to me within 24, at most 48 hours. This time,
Mm.
a week goes by and I haven't heard from her. Like, now that got
Yeah.
attention. Right? Because
True.
because the nature of projection is to see it over there first, see it in the other
Mm.
first, right? So I did the process. All right, what are they doing? They're not
Mm.
showing up. They're not
Mm.
doing what they said they would do. They're not keeping their word. They're not keeping their agreements. Right? I can
Mhm.
clearly there. Let me turn that mirror around. Oh crap! I didn't
Mhm.
do that work. How am I doing that? And it took me a few days to figure it out because I was going through my relationships in my mind. No, am I showing up?
Mhm.
Am I keeping my words? Yep. Am I keeping my agreements? Yep. And then it could hit me in relationship
Yeah.
to my writing. How many times
Mhm.
I said to myself, nobody else was in on this. I'm going to finish that chapter by such and such a date. Did I do it? No.
Mhm.
I was doing other important stuff, but I wasn't showing up for my writing. I wasn't keeping my
Mhm.
agreements with myself in this one area of life, in my writing. And so I was doing the same thing, right? Just different details, but I wasn't showing up. I wasn't keeping my
Mhm.
agreements. And but here's the beautiful thing about how this worked. Within an hour of my having that insight, they both called. No
Mm.
longer did I need to create external drama, external circumstances so that I could see, hey, you're not showing up for your writing. Make a choice, right? I don't have to do it if I don't want to, but make it conscious. Either keep the agreement, renegotiate the deadline, or just choose,
Mhm.
you know what? I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to finish that book. Make it conscious.
Mhm. True. That's amazing. Wow.
Yeah.
And also, okay, so for this different level up to mention, I mean, it's really a liberating perspective because um, uh, seeing love as a practice of awakening rather than possession or maybe perfection. So, and I really imagine that redefining love also need us to face some uncomfortable truths about ourselves. So that is also a thing to consider. Yeah,
Yep.
and um, like one of your key teachings in is the top 10 relationship challenges, and if you had to pick just one or maybe two of these um, that are the most pervasive, so what keeps showing up in your work?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and that's part of what I
Mhm.
get into the book is what are the common challenges in love? Like, what are the relationship patterns that keep showing up? And have
Mm,
been doing this work with people and then helping people with our relationships for almost 35 years.
mhm.
And so I think some of the things that get us into trouble is
Okay.
when we approach it with the relationship with unrealistic expectations. When we're looking for
Mhm.
somebody outside of us to complete
Mm,
us, to make us happy, forget it. Not gonna work.
mhm.
Another pattern that I often see is when we settle, right?
Mm,
We accept relationships that deep down inside we know are not, but we override our inner knowing, our intuition. We
mm,
override because our better sense, because we're
mm,
afraid of being alone, because we don't want to be
mm.
alone. Whatever the reasons may be, we override those intuitive yellow lights and red lights, and
Yeah.
we get in that relationship anyway. And yeah,
Mm,
we settle for less. And the thing is, if we're not fully respecting ourselves and
mhm.
honoring ourselves, how can we expect anybody else to do it? It's impossible.
True.
Um, then I think another pattern that often comes up is what we started talking about earlier, that
Mm,
we confuse infatuation for love. We
mm,
confuse the feeling of falling in love, which is a great, beautiful feeling, but it isn't real. It's to me, it's an illusion of nature to ensure
mhm.
the survival of the species. Because what
Mm.
happens when we fall in love is like those ego boundaries that keep us
Yeah.
separate, they fall away, right? And so for the what we call the honeymoon phase, whether it's 3 months,
Mm,
6 months, or 9 months if you haven't moved in together yet,
mm.
because at some point, they're gonna squeeze the toothpaste from the wrong end, or they're gonna do the toilet paper in the wrong way, and
Yeah.
then suddenly ego boundaries come back up, and what before
Mm,
they could do no wrong, now they can do no right. Then we start seeing all that, stuff
mm,
that we had hid for hidden ourselves, hidden
mm,
from ourselves. So that's a really important thing, and understanding that
mm,
the honeymoon, because a lot of times when the honeymoon ends, in quotes, that's we think, "Oh, we fell out of love. This isn't
mm,
working," and then we go looking for the next person. But you can say, we can argue that it's when the honeymoon ends that the
mm.
work of real loving begins. Um,
True.
that because now we're making the commitment. Now it's where we begin to realize that love is not that infatuation, that feeling of love, but it's the work of actual loving.
Mm.
That's when that kicks in. So I think
Exactly.
that's a really important thing. And then the other thing that I think is really important that gets us in trouble is that we didn't
Mm.
understand what the ego mind is. And so
True.
we carry old wounds from the past. We're unable to trust because somebody else,
Mm.
an ex, cheated on us or left us for somebody else. And then we approach the new relationship with all that
Mm.
woundedness from the past that has not been healed. And then we
Mhm.
project on each other. And how can that work? It becomes a self fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah. Huh. And also like you write about the power of breath as a tool for healing, connection, and even the transcendent states. So if you can also share like how breathe work transform not just the body but our emotional and the relational worlds as well.
That's a beautiful question.
Hmm.
Yes, I've been doing breath work for over 35 years. My
Hmm.
father was a psychiatrist. My
Okay.
degree is psychology. I was on a track to get a PhD in psychology. And when I
Hmm.
discovered breath work after my very first session, I jumped tracks. I never went for the PhD because it works so fast and heals so profoundly. I have yet to come across anything that heals
Mm,
emotional, psychological trauma as quickly as it does, and it's so many levels, and it heals at all levels, not only emotionally and
mm,
psychologically, but spiritually and mentally and even physically, and I know that sounds too good to be true just from breathing. So you breathe in a certain way. This particular practice, uh,
mm,
so there's a lot of different breathwork is a big umbrella term. There's a lot of different types of pranayam, of practices that we do, and breathing practices that have different effects. This particular breathwork that I practice, you breathe in a certain circular way for about an hour,
mhm,
and amazing stuff happens. And they haven't studied what's happening in the body when we breathe consciously. Like
mhm,
there's a lot of research on meditation. They're just now starting to breathe to study breathwork. I imagine you'll find a lot of points of comparison in terms of what's
mm,
the body, but when we think about it, this is what really helps me understand how the breath
mm,
can be so powerful. If we look at just about every religion or spiritual
mm,
tradition, and even some secular languages all over the world,
mm,
the
mm,
same word, one word, can mean breath or it can mean spirit.
mm,
And to me, that's ultimately what's going on. The breath is our most loyal, our most faithful companion on this journey of embodiment, of being alive.
mhm.
And if we and yet we take it for granted. Like, we
True.
it's a good thing that we don't have to remember to breathe because probably most of us will
Mhm,
that. But but that's the problem is we're taking this holy breath,
mm,
sacred breath, or this life-giving breath, what keeps us alive. Breath is life. Um,
yeah,
Spirit, wood, we take it for granted.
mm,
And so any practice that we can take on to bring consciousness to the breath, even
yeah,
to anything fancy, like 5 minutes a day, 10 minutes,
mm,
we pause what we're doing instead of getting up and do, or
mm,
you break at lunch and go sit by a tree or at the river or whatever, and then just focus on your breath. Just notice your breath. We gift the breath our attention. It will change
yeah.
us.
That's a great part. Yeah, lovely. So, and finally, like, in this age of modern distractions, like fast love, swipe culture, how do we cultivate the kind of patience and presence required for the deep and conscious relationships?
Beautiful question.
Mm-hmm.
It all begins with presence and awareness.
Mm, mm,
Do anything about what we can't see.
okay.
When we go through life in that automatic pilot
Mm,
mode and we get up and we go to have our breakfast and we shower, get dressed, go to work, get home, like
mm,
we get stuck into these habits. And then pretty soon, one day we wake up and we're 60,
mm.
70, 80, and our lives are mostly behind us. Uh,
Yeah.
so the key to avoid doing that, as we know, is to become
Mm-hmm.
present, to become self-aware, to be willing to dive deep within, and as you were
Mm,
saying earlier, that takes courage. Most of us have
mm,
spent a lifetime running away from ourselves, running away from our feelings on our pasts,
mm,
and to have the courage to go inside, to face ourselves, to ask ourselves the hard questions. Why do we do those things? Why
mm,
stuck in these patterns of relationship that sometimes
mm,
feel like it's the same boring movie, only with a
mm-hmm.
different actor, a different co-lead, but the same patterns,
True.
arguments, the same crap. At some
Mm,
point, we have to get honest and realize, wait a minute, there is one common denominator in every
mm,
one of those relationships, in every one of those arguments that's right here. And
mm,
ask the hard questions. Why? Why do I do that? What am I getting f why do I keep attracting that kind of person?
true.
And what do I need to heal within myself so I stop doing that? And
Mm,
most often it's gonna come down to self-worth, right? And to
mm,
love. So whatever work we are guided to do, whether it's a breath work,
mm,
whether it's EMDR, whether it's psychotherapy, coaching, counseling, whatever it is, do it so that we can then have real choices. have the possibility of choice about our relationships and why we do the things we do rather than get stuck in these automatic subconscious
Mm.
patterns without even knowing what we're doing.
True. What a great conversation. Wow. Lovely. Christian, I mean, this has been absolutely self-nourishing. I mean, your wisdom reminds us that conscious love isn't a destination, it's the practice and awakening, and ultimately a return to who we truly are. So,
Yeah.
that's a great part of it. And for all the listeners, I have to mention, like, if today's conversation started something inside you or within you, I invite all of you to sit with it and breathe into it and honor the journey that you are on. So, love, pleasure, and the purpose are not the outside of you. They are just, I mean, they rise from within. So, make sure to check out Christian's books, Conscious Love and Awakening the Soul of Power. They are the guidebooks for anyone who ready to step into their highest and most empowered self. So, with this hope, until next time, keep exploring your pleasure principles. And Christian, if someone wants to connect with you, what will be the best medium?
Uh, uh, Thank you, first of all, Avik, for having me on the show. I really appreciate it. I so enjoyed our conversation and the depth of your questions. And thank you for having this show because in your willingness to do that, people are being reached. You're making lives are being changed. So thank you because you serve us all in that way. In terms of how to reach me, probably the best way is my website, soulfulpower.com. SOLFUL power, POWER.com. And from there, they can either email me or access my social media.
Mhm. Amazing. Wow. That's great. So, dear listeners, I'll put all the links into the show notes for your easy reference. And with this hope, this is your host, Avik, signing off, reminding you that your pleasure, your power, and your purpose are sacred. So, don't forget to breathe into it. So, thank you so much.